Ernest arrive in Star Valley?
All right, so that one's a little bit tricky, and as I was doing research on it, some of the Star Valley Independent articles actually say that he arrived in Star Valley in 1923. And the Time magazine, and I can see why that would be a little bit confusing, because it says that he arrived in Wyoming in 1923. Well, he did arrive in Wyoming in 1923, but he was actually in Alta, Wyoming, and we will discuss that a little bit later.
So why is Swiss cheese so important?
So Swiss cheese commands a higher price than American cheese.
Okay, we could spend a lot of time on that next question, but in a brief review, can you tell me how he got to Star Valley?
Yeah, so he started out in Switzerland, as we know. He was a master cheesemaker at the age of 19. He also had additional study in horticulture, dairying, veterinary science, and bacteriology. And he was a young manager in Switzerland at such a young age. And he said, you know, I grew me out like a nice little mustache so that I looked older. And he says, I think I looked about age 36, you know, growing out this nice mustache. So looking at you today, I like your lederhosen, but I think you're missing your mustache.
So Grandpa arrived in Star Valley, and the first thing that they did was organize a farmers cooperative. This spreads the Swiss cheese profits throughout the community. The first Swiss cheese factory was then built in Freedom. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So he came in the fall of 1926, and it took him a year to build that first cheese factory. He called it the mother plant in Freedom on the Idaho side. And they were able to start making and producing Swiss cheese that next year. And so in August of 1927 is when they started actually making the Swiss cheese.
So the next important event was getting the first batch of Swiss cheese to the train station. It takes a long time for Swiss cheese to age and cure, so the original 23 patrons had to go without pay for 4 months. So getting this first shipment to Soda Springs, and might I add, in the middle of winter, about a week before Christmas, was a very big deal. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so they set up this farmers co-op, which gets all the money to go back into the community, and then it took time for that cheese to process and age. And so it was 4 months that they had to wait to be paid. And they took that first shipment in the middle of winter over Tin Cup, and they were headed over to Soda Springs, and there was a huge storm that came in. So they had 8 sleighs on that, and each of those horse-drawn sleighs carried 3 800-pound tubs of cheese each, and so they were trying to get these over the pass. And with this big storm that came in, they had 2 feet of snow on the ground. They had big 5-foot drifts that were 100 feet long, and they were trying to get these horses and this cheese, and they packed it in straw, and they were trying to get it over to the train station for this first shipment. Well, they had to unhook the horses from the sleighs, take the horses across to try to break the trail, and then they would come back, get the sleighs, put 2 sets of horses on the first one to try to bust through. And so they went back and forth all the way trying to get over Tin Cup in this middle of this winter storm. And then the problem is that then once they got it to the train, the cars were heated so that the cheese wouldn't freeze. But the problem is that the guy who did the bill of loading said that the cheese had come 5 days and 4 nights over this really cold, frigid weather, and so that it was frozen. So all these people were waiting to try to get this cheese there, and they didn't. They said that it was frozen. So Grandpa, he says, ha, I know somebody who lives in Oregon, because that's where this was headed over to. And he says he is he came from Switzerland, and he's well known in the area. And so he says if we could just get them to contact him and have this guy look at this cheese, we will get the problem solved. And so they did. And that guy, he said, you know, this is the best domestic cheese we've ever had on the West Coast. And so with that, the price went up. The farmers had, got their money, and Grandpa said, it was a dream come true. And we got that Swiss cheese over here.
So a fun fact is that the Thane plant was the largest of its kind in the world. By 1954, it was producing up to 10,800 pounds of Swiss cheese daily. I remember the retail room. Some study into this reveals that Grandma was the big part of this. So what year was this added to, and what was their slogan? So Grandma had a big part in that front entry area, and I remember going in there. A lot of people, I work as an optometrist now, and they come in and they say, you know, we're sad to not see the Swiss cheese factory and thing, because they would stop in and get cheese or whatever else. And was that it? And pie was a big one. But Grandma had a big part of that. So, what was the slogan?
So the slogan was, if you remember on the road signs, excuse me, everybody stops here. So how true was that? Everybody stops there. That's what we were known for in Star Valley. And so it was so very fitting. Grandpa, an interesting fact in here, he actually fluently spoke 6 languages. So like a lot of people that would come in and to the cheese factory, he could mostly communicate with, you know, so. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about the electricity side of things. So we first have to tell you guys about the Rural Electrification Act, otherwise known as REA. This was a big deal, and one of Dad's friends, he told me that the loan that Grandpa helped secure was one of the first ones, even on this side of the Mississippi River. So a lot of work that Grandpa went through to get that.
So this was a federal program, because a lot of the companies, it was just too small of a place to come into. So we got this loan from a federal loan, and that's what brought the electricity into the valley for the farmers and the cheese makers.
Yeah, so I know that Grandpa went to Washington, D.C. and got to know quite a few people involved in politics. And this is a really fun fact. So he was so involved in getting all of this started that, you know, along the poles, I've heard that along every single electrical pole there was the REA inscribed in there, and he named his own daughter Rhea. Another fun thing, another fun story that just really shows the community commitment that Grandpa had. The turbines that were put in, they were turned by the Salt River, and Grandpa and Aunt Rhea would actually have a little rowboat, and so in the winter months when it would freeze over, they would row that rowboat up and down in the middle of the night, the Salt River, so that they could keep the water over and to keep those turbines running, and so that those farmers could have electricity the next day. So just an amazing story of really the community commitment that he had. The next thing, so can you tell me what happened with what they call the throwing of the switch? So this happened on November 12th, 1938, and the lights went on for 287 co-op members of the state.
So it was to turn on the first electrical switch in the Freedom Cultural Hall to bring light to all of Star Valley. Grandpa was awarded the honor, and it was a fitting tribute to the result of his vision, guidance, and dedication.
It sure was. Can you tell us a little bit about how life-changing having power would be?
So as we all know, what would we do without power today? It changed lives. Amazing.
And just a fun fact, you know, Grandpa used to have individual generators that went into the cheese factories before this time. So,
All right, let's finish up talking about a couple of other contributions Grandpa had to Star Valley. Can you please tell us about some of those, Michelle?
Yeah, so he helped organize the family's first Chamber of Commerce with the help of J.F. Rome. He partnered with Howard Hemmert to establish Brogan Hemmert Hardware and Implement, and he instigated the completion of a paved road between Freedom and Leanne. And so those were just a couple of other additional community things that he helped with.
You think that it might have been something with getting better access to Soda Springs and getting the cheese out of the valley? Maybe. So if Grandpa had one word for something that he felt strongly about, what do you think that would be?
So I think that it would be ethics. So, you know, Grandpa Bro, he had a Swiss accent, so he would actually say it would be ethics. So ethics were very, very important to him.
So if we could sum it all up for the audience today, what would you say to sum it up?
So the Historical Encyclopedia of Wyoming sums it up quite nicely by saying, Ernest is a man of whom his adopted country may well be proud. You know, personally, I don't think I'll ever look at a piece of Swiss cheese the same again.
Me too. Thank you so much.
And if you haven't already, there is some Swiss cheese out on that table. So grab a piece of Swiss cheese. Can't say it came directly from Grandpa, but there's a piece of Swiss cheese out there, and please help yourselves and have a piece of Swiss cheese.
Thank you very much. Oh, that tastes good.
When Ernest came from Switzerland, a young man strong and true, he brought his dreams and willingness in his yodeling. He worked the land, he shared his skills, he always gave his best. And everywhere he lent a hand, the valley would progress. He taught more than yodel, yodel-lady, yodel-lady, yodel-lady. He taught more than yodel, yodel-lady. She's the very best around, and if you ask him how it's made, he'll gladly break it down. From Swiss tradition, skill and pride to Star Valley's fair land, he helped build dairies, farms and dreams with a steady heart and hand. He taught more than yodel, yodel-lay-hidee, yodel-lay-hidee, yodel-lay-hidee. He taught more than yodel, yodel-lo-hidee, yodel-hidee, yodel-lo-hidee, yodel-lo-hidee. Yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo-hidee, oh. Yodelay, yodelo-hidee, oh. Yodelay, yodelo-hidee. Yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo-hidee, oh. Yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo-hidee. Woo! He taught us how to work with grit to keep our word each day, to love our family, help our friends, and find a better way. He taught us more than yodeling, so that would have been just fine. He taught us how to build a life that leaves a mark through time. He taught more than yodel, yodel-lady, yodel-lady, yodel-lady. He taught more than yodel, yodel-lo-hidee, yodel-hidee, yodel-lo-hidee, yodel-lo-hidee. Yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodello-hidee. Yodelay, yodello-hidee, yodelay, yodello-hidee. Yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo-hidee, oh. Yodelay, yodelo, yodelay, yodelo-hidee. Hidee, yodelay,
Kind of took off with the mic here. Thank you for telling us about Ernest and the beautiful musical number. How many of you could yodel like that? I could. Holy smokes. I never knew Ernest at all, but he had an effect a little bit on some of these kids. I don't know if very many people other than the Bro family knew Larry Bro, but when I came off my mission That was one of the first places where I worked, was at his cheese factory he had here in town that was right there by the Elkhorn Arch. And I helped make cheese there, so I've had a little cheese making myself. But right now, I would like to invite the friends and family of the Broke family to stand and remain standing for the unveiling of his picture. And the unveiling of the picture will be done by Ann Broke, Fred Broke's wife. Redon, would you come help?
Ron and I are related. We even claim it.
Anyway, my father-in-law was great. Anything my husband would not do, he would. So, anyway, I really do appreciate him.
And clap if you want to. Okay, thank you, friends and family. You can be seated. It is an honor for me as chairman to recognize and accept Ernest Broke as an official member of the Town of Afton Heritage Hall of Fame. So. Okay, we will now hear about Lydia's life and the legacy she left from Amy Anderson, who was her grandniece. So we'll turn the time over to you.
I too would like to thank the committee. It's a great honor to be here today. My grandaunt Lydia, she never married, but she had many, many nieces and nephews, along with her hundreds of students that she taught for 36 years. 8 years ago, when my husband and I moved here after his second retirement, we moved to this beautiful valley, my choice, not necessarily his. The question I always get asked was, why did you move here? And then, who are you related to? When I would say that my Lydia Michelson was my grandmother's sister, everybody's eyes would light up and say things like, I mowed her lawn, and she watched me do it to make sure it was done right. She was very particular. I was her visiting teacher. I cared for her in the care center. I cared for her in the hospital before she went to the care center. She was a big part of my childhood memories. I believe that she was the first patient to move from the hospital to the new care center. And the one thing she told them, that she did not want to see the cemetery from her room. I don't blame her. She was the youngest of 13 children, born to Jacob and Elizabeth Emma Barker Michelson on October 25th, 1894, in a 2-room log home in the community of Glencoe, which is now called Thane. You'll have to forgive me for this next part. I'm a genealogist, so you're going to get lots of begats and begots and all that thing. She also had 2 half-siblings from her father's first marriage, a 2-year-old that died the same day his mother died, which left Jacob a widow with a young 1-year-old child. There are many stories about how, why, and what happened in the next year when he later married the Barker sisters, Susanna and Elizabeth Emma, on the same day in the endowment house in Salt Lake City. So Lydia also had 12 half-sibling cousins from her Aunt Susanna, eventually making her the youngest of 27 children of Jacob Michelson. Of her half-siblings, Nels, from the first marriage, married Susan Caroline Harmon from Fairview, and Hiram Edward from Aunt Susanna, married Catherine Isabel Stock, and they both lived in Star Valley. Of her 12 full siblings, 2 died as young children, Zina Tabitha and Dora Amanda. 3 sisters married before she was even born. Elizabeth Ann to Hogan Hoganson, Emma Eunice to Brigham Osro Gardner, and Martha Mora to George William Merritt. Another sister, Mary Ann, married Stephen Turner before Lydia was a year old. Her other siblings, you kind of recognize some of these names, I'm sure, in the valley. Her other siblings married Daniel Elias, who married Ada Edith McMillan, Mercy Truth, who married John Charles Taysom, Joseph, who married Eliza Pearl Hale, and my grandmother, Sarah Lois, who married Adelbert Earl Wild. She also had 2 sisters who never married, Eliza Jane and Bertha Ellen. She lived with Bertha for many years in their house on 3rd and Madison. So you can see that Lydia's roots run deep in this valley. Although she never married, she had lots of family here in Star Valley. Lydia was the aunt to 48 nieces and nephews from her full siblings and 57 nieces and nephews from her half-siblings, for a total of 105 nieces and nephews. Can you imagine today how many great-great-great-great-grand nieces and nephews she has? Some of them still residing in Star Valley. Lydia has 2 living nieces, one of whom I'm pleased to say is with us today. Eva Michelson-Bateman, a special welcome to you. When she was young and living in Glencoe, she shared in an oral history that was dictated during the summer of 1985, quote, "The roof was a whole lot of mud just put on top of boards, and then the top of the boards had a few slabs on top of the mud. But when it rained, that shifted down through, and the only place that was dry was under the table that Daddy had made. She, Mother, brought with her this big old table, and that was where they used to push the babies, Lois and I, underneath to keep them dry." One thing I didn't mention, but I will mention, is their homestead, where she was born, was across from where the rest area now is, and on 89. She was one of 11 students in the first graduating class of Star Valley High School in 1915. They chose the colors of crimson and gold and helped construct the original Red Rock Star on the hill. And if you don't know about that, you need to look that up. After high school, she worked on the ranch, and that is where she would have stayed, perhaps, if not for an unexpected turn of events. In 1919, when she was asked to teach first grade in Afton for a salary of $390 a year. Due to the 1918 flu epidemic, they had doubled the number of children in first grade since they didn't go to school that year before, and so they required an extra teacher. You can read more about that in the program. As a teacher in those days, she was strict, and I have been told, now this could be rumor, that she taught Lloyd Baker, which many of you know, he also lived to be 107, and his brother. One day his brother apparently didn't like something she said, and he went up and kicked her in the shins and left the class and never returned. As she taught, she began working on her college education on her own, attending summer school at various universities, and finally earning her degree in 1948 from the BY Academy, as she always called it, the BY. When her mother was aging, Lydia assumed the responsibility for the household, making sure that the cleaning, laundry, gardening tasks were all done, all while she was teaching full-time. Her stoic observation in later years was, quote, "That was what we had to do." She rarely spent any money on herself. She was raised very thrifty. They were very poor. She received $400 as a share in her inheritance from her mother's side of the family, which was a huge amount for somebody who had never was not used to many luxuries, she decided right away that she was going to buy furniture for her new home. She ordered an organ, a stylish bookcase, and a decorative table from the Montgomery Ward mail order catalog. In 1998, she was thrilled to be honored by the graduating class of Star Valley High School. Lydia at that time was the oldest living graduate. She was always active in her church, had a strong testimony of the gospel, which was greatly strengthened on her mission to the Eastern States in 1930. My summer visits were filled with wonderful memories, especially eating every meal on my purple plate. Some insist it's blue, but it was and will always be purple to me. You can see it out on the display table and make your own opinion, but it's purple. Walking into their home to the smell of fresh baked bread, eating raspberries fresh from the vine, and the beautiful flowers in her garden were always special memories for me. We also always had to take pictures on the front porch before we left, and they waved as we drove off. She died on December 1st, 2001, at the age of 107. Having lived in 3 centuries, can you just imagine the changes that she saw in the world between 1894 and 2001? It has been my pleasure to honor this woman, a dedicated teacher and a loving aunt. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now hear from Jeffrey Stevens, who is a great-grandnephew, and he'll favor us with a musical number entitled God Bless USA.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I've worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife, I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. Proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. An American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Thank you, Amy, for telling us about Lydia and Jeffrey. Wow, that was a good number. Okay, I would now like to invite the family and friends of Lydia Violet Michelson to stand as we unveil her portrait. And Amy Ederson will be unveiling it with Deanne Bruce helping her. Okay, thank you, family and friends. You can please be seated. Okay, it's an honor and privilege for me as the chairman to accept and recognize Lydia Violet Michelson as an official member of the Afton Heritage Hall of Fame. At the closing, we'd like to thank you for your attendance and express appreciation for those who have participated in the program today. As you leave the Civic Center today, please take time to view the displays that are out there in the atrium. To further celebrate, we encourage you to visit any of those the museums that are printed on the back of your programs. Today, the parade's usually been at 5 o'clock, but the parade's been moved to 3 o'clock today. So those in the families that are having floats or whatever, please meet down here on the corner where the information center is between quarter after and 2:30, so we can get set up so they can start at 3 o'clock. Tonight, if you're interested, the Search and Rescue will be sponsoring the Ranch Rodeo at 7 o'clock. And then there's a fireworks display right after the rodeo at 10 o'clock. If any of you have family that wasn't able to be here today, we have recorded the program. SBI Media has been really willing to help us out, and they gave us a camera so we could record it. It will go back to SBI Media on Monday, where they will take and they will get it put on their website, and within a week or so, if your family members want to see it, they can go on SBI Media YouTube website and they can see the whole program. There's no way we could broadcast this live, and so thank goodness we're able to record it. But we thank everybody for being here. What an honor to go and honor your ancestry like you guys have, the Brooks and the Michelson families. So with that, that's the end of our program. Thank you for being here.
Morning, Bishop.
Hello, how are you? I saw you back here.